Welcome back, everyone, to Open Line. We are talking about a ballot initiative that could roll back the 34% property tax increase that was passed by the council earlier this year. We have with us via Zoom Councilman at Large Bob Mendes, and we're going to start taking some calls here. Let's go to John. Hello, John.
Hey, I got like two questions. I just really wish someone would compile how many people would actually see their residential like property taxes go up by more than $30-40 a month, and like not based off of their estimate either, like the city's actually like assessed value. Personally, my property tax would only be going up by $32 a month, and I just have seen so much online about how they got these signatures and how they have kind of twisted some of the math to make it seem like people would be paying thousands and thousands of dollars more a year to really scare them, and then have the nerve to really be like the mayor's doing scare tactics. I think the other thing I have to say about the whole thing is, capping the taxes at 2%. Like that is just so crazy to me. Like for the next increase, that would be the most we could do is what, 6 cents for every $100 or however that works. And it's just mind-boggling to me that they're just trying to use this referendum to keep taxes low forever. And I just want to say, just to kind of recap it all, I wanted to talk how many people are really going to see their taxes go up by more than $30-40 a month? And can I hear more thoughts on the cap itself?
Okay, we'll ask both those. The numbers he's asking how many people are going to see their property taxes go up by more than $30-40 a month. So what do you say to that?
I don't have that exact math with me today, but not that many. I mean, the average home in Davidson County is about $250,000 worth of value, $300,000 worth of value, somewhere in there, and number is. I believe him on his math. That's about right. To his point, though, it doesn't diminish for people who are on a fixed income. I mean, this is the thing I was talking about before. If you're on a fixed income, you'd really like the government to do this in small increments rather than a big lump. But the fact that Metro kept the rate pretty much the same without going up from 2005 to 2020 with just one change made it so a big jump was unavoidable at some point. But here we are. So he's right about that. He's also right that the 2% number really is cynical to say that you could raise it 2% without a referendum. Every rate increase in the history of Metro, Mayor Fulton, Mayor Boner, Mayor Bredesen, Purcell, Dean, every tax rate increase over the years has been greater than 2%, quite a bit greater than 2%. And that's the same thing as saying you can never raise the rate without a referendum. And again, studies show, history shows that if that's what you do, you paralyze being able to move forward. And I assume that's the actual intent here.
I think they would say 2% is about the cost of living, and that's reasonable. And I think that's why they came up with 2%. Why do you say that's not reasonable?
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that if we raised it 2% every year, or 1.99% every year, by the time we did it the third, fourth year in a row, these same people would be coming back saying, we can't do it every year. And it paralyzes the city's ability to handle a downturn. At 2% only cost of living, when we are currently at our low point in not having any savings, we would be forbidden from ever accumulating any sort of fund balance, rainy day fund. We would just be treading water with our current poor cash position. And if another downturn came, we'd crater with no ability to make up cash. The way cities should work is during good times, it stacks away seed corn by accumulating reserves. And then in bad times, you can use that money instead of going to raise the tax rate. What we've done the opposite of this. We just got out of a wonderful, fantastic boom time, and we, as a city, accumulated absolutely nothing because we refused to do anything to the tax rate. So now we're in hard times, and instead of using seed corn that we've got stored away, we're stuck with no options. The 2% year in and year out destroys the flexibility of the way it should work to save during good times and work off savings in bad times.
Let's go to the phones here. Let's go to Tori. Hello, Tori.
Hey.
Go right ahead.
Hi, Tori Venable here, Americans for Prosperity. So I'd like to ask Councilman Mendes, what about the fact that Nashville has $3.49 billion in debt, whereas Tennessee only has $1.49 billion in general bond obligation? What about the unfunded pension liabilities? Nashville has been on the wrong track for a long time, and now there's another, $1.5 billion proposed for another transit plan. We have got to stop the corporate welfare. We have got to stop the unrestricted spending, and we have got to move forward in a fiscally responsible situation. And I am just appalled that the council refuses to take any action to cut their spending now. Absolutely appalled.
Okay. Tori Venable, thank you. Thank you for the question. She's with Americans for Prosperity. She's the director, and that's the group that has brought this up. So you heard her question. Our debt, Nashville's debt, is more than the state's, and they say that points that we're on the wrong track, and we need to dramatically change things. What about that?
Well, she's good with buzzwords, really kind of bad at facts, though. So first of all, anybody who has listened to me on this program or read my blog or heard me speak at any point that I've been in office knows that the city's debt and the unfunded pension liability, that I'm the lead person in the council in criticizing that and reforming and getting common sense transparency reforms in place over the last 5 years. And it'll take a few years to unwind the bad habits through previous administrations, but we're on track through transparency to do that. What would be a disaster would be to, at the end of a cycle of some of the things she was talking about, at a low point in cash, to freeze the government's ability to get money. It would be a terrible, no business would do that. When you're at the worst point cash-wise, you have to recover, rebuild. And this referendum screws the ability to do that. The corporate welfare thing, again, wonderful buzzword. If we canceled every slice of any giveaway, any incentive whatsoever, and waved a magic wand and got rid of it, there would be some $40 million a year. And they're talking about taking $300 million out of the budget. I was crunching numbers earlier today. If you canceled every incentive to a private business, got rid of all affordable housing, got rid of every spending on a nonprofit, got rid of everybody in the mayor's office, got rid of everybody in the council's office, you'd still have another $250 million worth of cuts you had to do in order to make up for the loss of this revenue. They're great buzzwords, weak on facts.
The other thing that I've heard people say is that businesses have had to make cuts in this downturn, and we haven't seen the same from Metro government. What do you say to that argument? That I guess, this is the time we've hit hard times, and Metro should make some significant cuts.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I blame previous mayor administration for sort of obfuscating, hiding the facts during the last couple budget cycles when that administration was saying everything's great, nothing to look at, no problems here. Every year they were having targeted savings and cutting departments. Most departments are the same size now that they were years ago. The fire department has as many firefighters now as they had in the 1990s, to the point where it impacts our fire insurance rates here in town. In our rapidly growing city, city government has not kept up on size, and in fact, in many instances, has stayed the same size. Everybody knows this. Anybody who's gotten in a car accident without an injury and waited for 4 hours for a police officer, anybody who's tried to get a permit from codes and waited all day, knows that the city is not overstaffed with a bunch of bureaucrats sitting around doing nothing. It's been lean, and it's been cutting for multiple years, to the point where now there's not a lot to cut and still have a growing city operate.
Let's go to Reverend Fuzz. Reverend Fuzz, hello.
Hey, Ben. I missed 15 minutes of the earlier part of the program, and the reason was my doorbell rang, and it was Steve Glover. Isn't that something? I think he's got another side to this. I got a couple quick questions, though, that I've never been able to get answers to. They'll use this word corporate welfare. I don't know what that is. I don't care about that part. But what I'm trying to ask, since I don't drive right now, I get to ride, and when I ride through downtown, I count all the cranes. I mean, man, there are dozens of cranes. They're building skyscrapers. So wouldn't those skyscraper building projects produce revenue for taxes, like for the building material or something? So if you're building $1 billion building, my developer guy says 2% of that tax money goes to Metro. The other part is, Steve, can you just give us an example of how the so-called corporate welfare pays back? Just one example, like it can be any company that, like, the city gave you such and such, and in 10 years you were going to produce this for the city. Can you give an example of one of those companies? How much did they produce in jobs and money and return to the city? And then thirdly, is there an alternative to this 34% that you could have talked to the public about? Like, could we have had a multiple choice of, are there some other ways that we could have generated the money that this city needed without this thing that looks like people don't agree with? I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it, but I'm hearing so many people divided and torn apart by this, when we ought to be working towards, some kind of unity. Now we're working towards a vote to dismantle what's been put in place. What did we do wrong?
Okay, all right, Reverend Fuzz. All right, that's a lot to chew on, and I really appreciate your call. We are going to have Steve Glover on tomorrow morning, and he is a conservative council member who has a very different point of view. And I know Councilman Mendes has been somebody who's opposed to a lot of the corporate welfare. We've talked about that. We've litigated that. You can certainly answer his question, but I like the question there also. Is there an alternative to this 34% property tax increase? We've talked a little bit about that, but I think that's what people are looking for. Is there some sort of alternative? And Councilman, what about that?
Yeah. So first of all, I hope Reverend Buzz is feeling all right. I know he's been having some. Well, I hope he's feeling better. Thanks for the call. There's some revisionist history again from some folks, and Councilman Glover had a budget proposal, and that the council considered. His budget proposal was that the property tax rate would go up 22% instead of 34%. But, and this is the part that some people like to forget about, was he was going to double the wheel tax, so the annual amount you pay to get your car in place. And the math worked out that if you were a lower or middle income family with 2 cars and an average size house, you absolutely positively would have paid more under Councilman Glover's approach than the 34% on property tax, because the doubling of the wheel tax would have cost more than just paying it all in property tax. And the only winners under Councilman Glover's approach were going to be business owners that owned a lot of real estate, because they didn't have to worry about the wheel tax, and there was pandering to there, and so there was a multiple choice. Our favorite conservative council member said 22% and double the wheel tax, and respectfully, I think the council saw through that and voted it down, because the wheel tax would have been bad for lower income and middle income people. The reality is that even Councilman Glover, from his conservative perspective, couldn't figure out how to propose something less than 22% and a doubling of the wheel tax and cutting city resources. The previous administrations have done a great disservice by refusing to talk about the hole we were digging ourselves into, because a lot of people didn't focus on it till this year. As you know, Ben, I've been saying for several years that there's a big hole that was coming around. And at this point, short of taking a giant machete to government services in a way that would hurt a lot of folks, the property tax rate is unfortunately the best of the bad options.
I mean, I think it's fair to say there's been some real smoke and mirrors. We've seen year after year where at the last minute something is done and we don't have to have a property tax increase. The fact of the matter is now the comptroller is involved. The state is saying our situation is so bad, we have so few reserves that we've got to do something. And he's saying if I take over, there are going to be massive cuts. And I guess that's kind of where we are. Where in the past we've been able to kind of hide or pass the buck for another year, we're kind of at the end of our rope now. Is that a fair statement, or what would you say?
You nailed it. In previous years where the smoke and mirrors were going on, for several years we were selling off some assets, real estate, parking enforcement rights, and spending down savings. And if you go back and look at the comptroller's presentation to us last November, he illustrated how over a period of 4 or 5 years, we spent down our cash savings. And literally, of the 25 biggest cities in America, the average rainy day fund coming into COVID-19 was about 30% of an operating budget. If we had been average, we would have had some $700 million on a rainy day fund. Nashville instead was worst out of the 25 biggest cities in America with a rainy day fund somewhere around 5%. And if you couple worst in America rainy day fund due to refusal to be serious about property taxes over many years, coupled with COVID-19, that's a lose-lose. And the options are limited on how to deal with that, unfortunately.
All right, we are going to take a break. I will get to more phone calls. They are definitely there. We'll take a break, be back with more calls right after this.